Before the first tomb was sealed, before the dead were weighed against truth, before eternity learned the meaning of justice, a god was murdered. Not by an enemy from the heavens, but by his own blood. Egypt was once ruled by a king who did not conquer with swords. He ruled with harvests, with laws, with the quiet promise that life had order and death had meaning. His name was Osiris, but beneath the golden sunlight of the Nile, envy learned how to whisper. A brother smiled, a feast was prepared, and a beautifully carved chest measured to perfection, weighted like a coffin that did not yet know its name. When the lid closed, the river carried more than a body. It carried the fate of every soul that would ever die. What followed was not merely betrayal, but the tearing of a god into pieces, the rise of forbidden magic, and a war that would decide who rules the living and who judges the dead. This is not a story of the past. It is the moment death learned to speak. There was a time, long before history hardened into stone, when Egypt did not fear the future. The Nile flowed as if it understood mercy. Its waters rose when the people needed life, and withdrew when the land needed rest. Fields turned green beneath the sun, and hunger was a stranger whose name no one remembered. This was the age of Osiris. He was not a king forged by war. He did not sit upon his throne with blood on his hands, or fear in his eyes. Osiris ruled as the earth rules, patient, generous, inevitable. He taught humanity what it meant to be more than beasts. From his voice came law, measured and fair, not born of punishment, but of balance. From his hands came agriculture, the sacred knowledge of seed and season, of trusting the soil with one's future. And from his presence came a quiet certainty that life had purpose, and that even death when it arrived would not be cruel. Beside him walked Isis. She was not merely his queen, she was his equal, his shadow and his light. Where Osiris shaped the world, Isis understood its hidden currents. Her magic was not loud. It did not tear the sky or split mountains. It whispered to reality, and reality listened. Together, they ruled not through fear, but through harmony. The people sang their names during harvests. Children learned them before they learned their own futures. Temples rose, not as monuments to power, but as acts of gratitude. And yet, even in a perfect kingdom, darkness does not announce itself. It waits, in the margins, in the corners of the heart, in the silence where gratitude turns into comparison. That silence belonged to Set. Set, the brother of Osiris, walked the same halls, shared the same divine blood, yet felt forever unseen. Where Osiris was order, Set was storm. Where Osiris brought growth, Set brought movement, desert winds, thunder, upheaval. He was not evil by birth, but he was restless, and restlessness when fed by envy learns to hate stillness. Each cheer for Osiris fell like a stone in Set's chest. Each prayer whispered to Isis reminded him of what he was not. And slowly, quietly, a thought took shape. Why does he rule and not I? Set watched the people kneel, watched the kingdom flourish, watched his brother become not just a king, but a symbol of meaning itself. And in that watching, love curdled into resentment. Resentment sharpened into intention. And intention, at last, learned how to smile. Set began to plan, not with fire, not with armies, but with trust. Because the deadliest blade is the one never seen. Far from the fields and temples, in chambers where laughter echoed falsely, a chest was crafted. Its wood was rare, its carvings exquisite, its measurements precise. Too precise. It was shaped not for treasure, but for a body. A divine body. Set ran his fingers along its edges and imagined a kingdom without Osiris. Outside, Egypt slept peacefully. unaware that the age of innocence was already ending, because when betrayal is born, it does not rush. It waits for the perfect moment to close the lid. Jealousy does not arrive like thunder, it seeps in like sand, quietly filling every space where peace once lived. Set learned patience. He learned how to laugh at feasts where Osiris was praised, how to raise his cup in honor, while his thoughts sharpened like hidden knives. In the courts of Egypt, he played the role of the loyal brother. He spoke with eloquence. He offered counsel when asked. He bowed at the right moments. And all the while, his mind was elsewhere, measuring weakness, studying trust, waiting. Set knew something others did not. Order breeds vulnerability. Osiris believed in harmony so deeply that he forgot chaos could wear a friendly face. Isis sensed unease. She felt it not as a vision, but as a subtle distortion, like a note played slightly out of tune in an otherwise perfect song. At night, when the palace slept, she watched Set from shadowed corridors. His smiles were flawless. Too flawless. Magic whispered warnings to her, but magic speaks in riddles, and even Isis could not yet name the danger. Meanwhile, Set began to gather allies, not warriors, but listeners. Those who resented Osiris's gentle laws, those who missed the old ways of raw power, those who believed fear ruled better than fairness. He did not command them, he validated them, and validation is a powerful poison. You deserve more, he told them. The world needs strength, not softness. The throne belongs to those bold enough to take it. Each word was a thread, and slowly a web took form. Then came the idea. Simple, elegant, irreversible. Set announced a celebration, a grand feast in honor of Osiris's reign. Music would flood the halls. Wine would flow like the Nile in flood season. The gods themselves would be invited. No one questioned it. Why would they? To doubt Set was to doubt family. To doubt family was unthinkable. In secret, the chest was revealed to those who needed to see it. It gleamed under torchlight, polished, flawless, inviting. Set ran his hand along its lid. This, he said softly, is a gift worthy of a god. The plan was unveiled in whispers. Laughter followed. Nervous laughter. The kind that knows it has crossed a line from which there is no return. One by one, they agreed, because by then they were already complicit. On the day of the feast, Egypt dressed itself in gold. The palace doors opened wide. Perfumes filled the air. Musicians played songs of unity and triumph. Osiris arrived smiling, unaware that the music masked a funeral hymn. Isis stood at his side, radiant, watchful. Her unease had grown sharper, a quiet ache beneath her calm. Set welcomed them both, his embrace warm, his voice sincere. "Brother," he said, "today we celebrate you." And Osiris believed him. Because betrayal never looks like hatred, it looks like love. As the feast reached its height, Set rose. Servants wheeled forward the chest, its surface catching firelight like something alive. "I have prepared a gift," Set announced, "for whoever fits this chest perfectly." Laughter rippled through the hall. One by one, guests tried, too tall, too wide, too small. The game amused them. Set turned to Osiris. "Brother," he said gently, "will you honor us?" Osiris hesitated only a moment. Trust stepped forward before caution could speak. He lay down inside the chest. It fit perfectly. The laughter stopped. In a single shattering moment, the lid slammed shut. Metal sealed wood. Magic locked breath. Before Isis could cry out, before Osiris could rise, the chest was bound, sealed with molten lead, and carried away. Chaos erupted. But it was too late. By the time Isis reached the riverbank, the Nile had already claimed its offering. The chest struck the water with a sound that echoed across eternity, and as the current pulled it into darkness, Egypt lost more than its king. It lost its innocence. because when a god falls, the world must change. And this was only the beginning of the unmaking. The Nile did not rage, it did not protest, it accepted. Moonlight shattered across its surface as the chest drifted, silent, sealed, bearing a god who could no longer breathe. Inside, Osiris felt the world vanish. Sound dulled. Light died. Time lost its shape. For the first time since creation learned to bloom, a god knew fear. Not fear of death, but fear of abandonment. Water pressed against the wood. The river whispered ancient secrets that no living ear was meant to hear. And then, darkness. The chest traveled far beyond Egypt's borders, guided by currents older than kings. Days passed. Nights folded into one another, until at last it lodged itself against the roots of a great tree near the shores of Byblos. The tree grew around it. Wood embraced wood. Life swallowed death. Unknowing hands would later cut that tree, shaping it into a pillar for a foreign palace, never guessing that inside rested the broken silence of a murdered god. Back in Egypt, the world unraveled. Fields failed to answer their seeds. The Nile faltered. Birds abandoned their songs. And in the palace, Isis screamed. Her cry was not human. It tore through stone and memory alike. It was the sound of magic losing its anchor. She tore the crown from her head. She dressed in mourning black. She scattered ashes across her hair and vowed a vow no power could unmake. "I will find you," she whispered into the night. Across rivers. Across lands. Across death itself, Set claimed the throne. Not with celebration, but with force. His rule was sharp, decisive, unforgiving. Temples closed. Fear replaced faith. Order cracked beneath the weight of domination. Set believed the deed complete. But betrayal is never finished while love still breathes. Isis began her search. She moved like a shadow across the world, disguised, unrecognized, relentless. She questioned sailors. She bribed winds. She followed rumors that dissolved into dust. Each night, she slept on stone. Each dawn, she rose harder, her grief sharpening into purpose. At last, in a distant land, she felt it, Apol, a resonance. Magic recognized magic. In the palace of Byblos, she saw the pillar, tall, polished, revered. She touched it, and the world wept. With reverence and rage intertwined, she revealed herself. Kings bowed, servants fled, the pillar was split, and there, within the heart of living wood, lay Osiris, silent. Still. Divine. Isis wrapped his body in linen, as if tenderness itself could heal death. She carried him home beneath the stars, each step a defiance of fate. For a moment, hope breathed again. But Set felt the shift. Chaos always knows when it is threatened. In the darkness of night, he found the body, and this time he did not hesitate. In a fury that shattered restraint, Set tore Osiris apart, limb from limb, essence from form. 14 pieces, scattered across Egypt like a curse written into the land. Set laughed. Now, he said to the empty wind, let her try to resurrect eternity. He vanished into the desert, certain that even love could not undo this. But Set misunderstood one thing. Love does not need wholeness, it needs devotion. And Isis was not finished. Grief does not ask permission. It arrives like nightfall, inevitable, absolute. When Isis learned what Set had done, she did not scream. Screams belong to shock. This pain was older than sound. She stood at the edge of the Nile, the wind lifting her mourning veil. And for the first time since creation, magic trembled, not because it was weak, but because it was about to be pushed beyond every law it had ever obeyed. Isis knelt. She pressed her palms into the earth as though Egypt itself were a living body, as though the land might remember where its god had been torn apart. "Tell me," she whispered to the soil. "Tell me where he is." The earth answered, not with words, but with feeling. A shudder, a pull, a trail of sorrow etched across the kingdom. And so began a journey no goddess had ever dared before. Isis became a wanderer. She crossed marshlands where reeds hissed secrets. She walked deserts where the sun tried to erase memory itself. She sailed the Nile endlessly, its waters reflecting her face, a face hollowed by loss and sharpened by purpose. Each fragment of Osiris called to her differently. A hand buried beneath a tamarisk tree, a leg lost to the river's hunger, a rib guarded by snakes, as if even venom respected what it protected. Wherever she found a piece, Isis wept, and where she wept, she built a shrine. Egypt became a map of mourning, sacred sites marking where love had refused to surrender. The people watched in silence. They did not interfere. They did not speak. They understood something monumental was unfolding, something beyond kings and thrones. This was devotion made flesh. Piece by piece, Isis gathered her husband. She wrapped each fragment with care, chanting spells so ancient they predated fear. But one piece remained lost, consumed by a creature of the Nile claimed by chaos itself. Isis stood over the assembled body, incomplete yet revered. For a moment, doubt crept close. Could even she, goddess of magic, undo such destruction? Then she remembered. Love is not logical. Resurrection does not ask permission. Calling upon Anubis, guardian of thresholds, she prepared the first sacred rites. Linen was wrapped. Oils were poured. Incantations rose into the night, like wounded prayers seeking the stars. Isis transformed herself. She spread her arms and wings of shimmering light unfolded, a hawk circling fate itself. She hovered over Osiris's body, chanting words that bent reality, words that taught breath how to return. The air thickened, the world held still. For one impossible moment, Osiris stirred, not fully alive, not fully gone. Life flickered within him, a sacred flame shielded from extinction. In that moment between worlds, Isis conceived Horus, a child born not of comfort but of defiance. Then Osiris sank back, not into death, but into something new. He could not return to the living world. Instead, he descended, becoming lord of the afterlife, king of those who had crossed beyond breath. Isis collapsed beside him, exhausted, victorious, broken. She had not restored the past. She had reshaped eternity, but danger still hunted her. Set would never allow what was born that night to live. And so Isis vanished, carrying within her the future of justice, hidden in silence. Because from grief had come purpose, from death a reckoning. The night Isis completed the rites, the universe shifted, quietly, irreversibly. Osiris did not rise with breath in his lungs or warmth in his skin. He rose in authority. He descended beyond the horizon of the living into the shadowed halls where souls wander, where silence weighs heavier than stone. There, Osiris was crowned again, not with gold, but with truth. He became lord of the Duat, the unseen kingdom beneath existence, where every soul must one day stand naked before justice. And justice would now remember betrayal. Above, Isis hid. She fled not in fear, but in wisdom. For Set still ruled the throne of Egypt, and Set feared one thing above all others, a rightful heir. Isis wrapped herself in disguise, a humble woman, a widow, a shadow among reeds. She traveled to the marshes of the delta, where the land dissolves into water and secrets survive. There, among whispering papyrus and watchful stars, she prepared to give birth. Magic guarded her, not with fire or lightning, but with silence. Scorpions circled her shelter, not as threats, but as sentinels. The winds carried false trails, the moon dimmed its glow. And when the child came into the world, the heavens did not roar. They listened. Horus was born fragile, as all destinies are at their beginning. His cry was small. But the echo of it reached even the desert, where Set ruled uneasily. Isis held her son close and felt both terror and awe. Within this child rested vengeance, justice, and restoration. Within this child, the future sharpened its teeth. She raised Horus in secrecy. She taught him caution before strength, patience before anger, truth before power. She told him stories of his father, not of the murder, but of the harmony that once ruled Egypt. Remember, she whispered, power that forgets compassion becomes chaos. Meanwhile, Osiris judged the dead. Each soul passed before him, their hearts weighed against the feather of Maat. He did not rule with cruelty, he ruled with balance. And slowly, word spread through eternity, the dead were no longer lost, there was meaning beyond the grave. Set felt it. Dreams haunted him, storms disobeyed him. The desert howled his name not in reverence, but in warning. He searched for the child. He sent hunters into marsh and shadow. He promised rewards and whispered threats. But Isis was always one step ahead, because love teaches strategy that fear can never understand. Years passed. Horus grew, strong of limb, sharp of mind, eyes burning with quiet fire. One night, beneath a sky carved with stars, Isis spoke the truth at last. She told him of the chest, of the river, of the pieces scattered across Egypt. She told him who he was, and who he must face. Horus did not rage. He did not shout. He stood in silence. And in that silence, the world braced itself. I will claim what was stolen, he said. Not for revenge, but for balance. Isis closed her eyes. The war she had delayed could no longer be denied, because destiny, once named, demands fulfillment. And Set was no longer the hunter, he was the hunted. Horus grew not as a boy, but as a promise. A spark hidden in shadows, a sword forged in silence. Isis guided him. Every lesson was measured, deliberate, a dance between concealment and preparation. He learned to move like the desert wind, swift, invisible, unstoppable. He learned the language of the reeds and the river, the whispers of birds and insects, the subtle signals of danger. Magic surrounded him, but subtly. Not for spectacle, for survival. Set's spies prowled endlessly, but they saw only dust and reeds. They heard only wind. The boy who would become the heir was always one step ahead, always a ghost in the sun-baked marshes. And yet, Horus was more than cunning. He carried the fire of his father, justice tempered by wisdom. Every heartbeat reminded him that the throne he would claim was not born of vengeance alone, but of restoring order to a world undone. Night after night, he trained beneath the stars. Hawks circled overhead, their wings tracing invisible patterns in the sky, a silent blessing from Osiris himself. Isis whispered stories of his father, how Osiris ruled Egypt with fairness, how Set had betrayed life itself, how love and devotion could conquer even death. Horus listened, not with childish wonder, but with eyes that already held the storms of a future king. And the more he learned, the more the magic of Osiris pulsed through him, not as a ghost, but as a living force, a power that would awaken the land itself against tyranny. Set, meanwhile, felt the tides shifting. The Nile no longer whispered only obedience. It murmured secrets to those who listened. The deserts trembled with hidden warnings, and every shadow seemed to carry the shape of a hawk, eyes blazing with purpose. Set's confidence faltered, and for the first time, the hunter felt the chill of being hunted. The world prepared. Egypt waited in suspended silence. The hour of reckoning approached. Horus was no longer a boy in hiding. He was a storm, gathering strength, waiting for the moment to claim what was always his, not with cruelty, but with truth. The sun rose over Egypt like a warning. Shadows stretched long, trembling in the heat. For the first time in centuries, the land itself felt the pulse of impending reckoning. Horus emerged from the marshes, no longer a boy, no longer hidden. He moved with the grace of hawks and the patience of rivers. Each step echoed purpose. Each glance carried fire. Set awaited him atop the throne, his eyes sharp with rage and arrogance. He had ruled by fear. He had thought power eternal. But even tyranny senses the approach of truth. The two gods faced each other in the heart of Egypt, the Nile between them, the desert framing their destiny, and the skies above silent witnesses. Horus spoke first, his voice calm but unyielding. "Your time has ended, brother. You have stolen. You have killed. And you have defiled what was sacred. Justice will be restored." Set laughed. It was a laugh that cracked the air sharp and brittle, like bones breaking under weight. "Justice?" He spat. "You speak of justice to the one who bows only to power?" The air shifted. Magic stirred. The rivers heaved. Birds scattered in every direction. Then the battle began. Not with swords, but with forces older than mortals. Horus struck with lightning-like speed, his strikes guided by wisdom and the unseen hand of Osiris. Set countered with storms, with fire, with chaos made flesh. Mountains trembled. Sandstorms devoured the plains. The Nile boiled under their wrath. Egypt itself seemed to scream in both terror and hope, yet Horus did not rage. He measured, he learned, he waited. Every feint, every strike, every blow was calculated, destined, inevitable. Set roared, unleashing chaos with abandon. But even chaos has limits. Horus became the living balance, absorbing every strike, redirecting every fury, until Set began to falter, and cracks appeared in his arrogance. Finally, the decisive moment arrived. Horus leapt, not with hate but with precision. With one strike he struck Set down, not to kill but to humble. Set fell to the sand, exhausted, defeated, and the first tears of acknowledgement touched his eyes, the first recognition that the usurper of order had lost. Horus stood tall, not with triumphal arrogance, but with the calm authority of one who restores balance. And Egypt, witnessing this cosmic duel, breathed again. The skies cleared. The Nile flowed steady. Life returned to the land. Justice, at last, had walked among the living. But Horus did not rule alone. He ruled as the heir of Osiris, guided by the lessons of love, patience, and sacrifice. Set was cast down, not destroyed, but held in check. Chaos was not annihilated, it was balanced. And so the throne of Egypt was restored. The kingdom knew peace again, fragile, but true. Yet the echoes of betrayal, the shadows of grief, and the memory of resurrection would live forever, for Egypt had learned that power without balance is death, and love without courage is wasted. The echoes of battle faded. The dust settled upon the land. The Nile flowed calm, as if relieved, and the sky breathed deep, casting a golden light over the kingdom. Horus stood at the throne, his gaze steady, his presence carrying the weight of both father and mother, both vengeance and mercy. Osiris, from the realm beyond life, watched through the veil of eternity. He was no longer flesh, no longer bound to mortal sight, yet every heartbeat of Egypt echoed in him. The pieces of the world, once torn, now whispered of restoration. The dead who had trembled in fear walked in the justice of their hearts, their souls weighed fairly, against the feather of Maat. And Isis, she who had wandered rivers and deserts, she who had breathed life into the broken. She who had fought death itself with love stood beside Horus, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and triumph. Egypt held its breath. The people, the land, the animals, the winds, all bore witness to the fulfillment of a destiny older than kings. Horus spoke softly, yet his voice carried to the heavens. Balance is restored. Justice walks again. Chaos will not vanish, but it will serve its place, as it was meant to. From the shadows, Set rose, not defiant, not triumphant, but humbled. He bowed his head, and the desert winds carried his acknowledgement. Even chaos must yield to order. Osiris's voice filled the hearts of mortals and gods alike. Life and death, love and loss, order and chaos, all are threads in the eternal tapestry. No betrayal, no sorrow, no shadow can unweave what devotion has sown. The people rejoiced, but quietly, for they knew the lesson etched deep into the soil of Egypt. That power without balance is ruin, and love without courage is empty. Horus ruled with wisdom, guided by the unseen hand of Osiris, tempered by the loyalty and magic of Isis. The kingdom flourished again, not as it once had, but as it was always meant to be. Stronger, wiser, eternal. And somewhere between river and sky, between life and death, the gods themselves learned that the threads of eternity could bend, but they could not break. For love, once fully realized, can defy even the cruelty of betrayal. And so the story of Osiris, Isis, Set, and Horus was written into the stars, into the Nile, and into every heart that ever dared to hope beyond the ordinary. The world was balanced. The dead were judged. The living thrived, and eternity was forever changed, long after the gods withdrew from mortal sight, long after temples turned to dust, and names were carved only in memory. The balance they fought for remained. For Osiris did not only rule the dead, he taught the living that justice is born from sacrifice. Isis did not merely wield magic, she proved that love, when unwavering, can stitch even death back into meaning. Horus did not fight for a throne, he rose to remind the world that rightful power is guided by wisdom, not rage. And Set did not vanish. For chaos never does, it waits. Patient, watching, testing the strength of order. Thus the ancient truth endures, that life is a cycle of fall and restoration. That darkness sharpens the light, and that balance is never given, it is earned, again and again. Even now, as the Nile still flows, and stars still trace forgotten names across the sky. The story continues, not in temples, but in every choice made between order and chaos. This was never just the story of gods. It was always the story of us. And so, dear traveler, you have crossed the threshold into a legend older than time itself. If this story stirred something within you, a question, a wonder, a quiet awe, then know this, you are always welcome here, because beyond the ordinary lie the stories that shape who we are and who we dare to become. Until our paths cross again, walk wisely and keep your eyes open for the myths, still whispering in the shadows of our world.